আচ্ছা, সো আমি একটা শিট বানাচ্ছিলাম আপনাদের জন্য। সো আই থট স্কুলে বসে বসে বানাচ্ছিলাম, আর আই ওয়াজ লাইক বানালে শুধু বানাবো না, একটু গো থ্রু করি। আপনারা যারা নিউ আছেন, আমার দিস ভিডিও ইজ ডিরেক্টেড টু দ্য স্টুডেন্টস ইন মাই স্কুল যারা নিউ ব্যাচে আছেন, অ্যান্ড যারা জাস্ট জেনারেলি কোয়েশ্চেন সেভেন বলে সেকশন এ আপনাদের এডেক্সেল IGCSE ইংলিশের স্ট্রাকচারের সাথে ফেমিলিয়ারাইজ হতে যাচ্ছিলেন। Let's talk about first. Let's talk about the simple retrieval questions or the short burst questions. The quick fire questions অনেক নাম দেয় এটার। So question 1, 2, 4 and 5 এগুলো হচ্ছে আপনার simple retrieval question. Each contains 1 mark. Given question 5 contains 2 questions, 1 marks each. তাহলে এখানে আপনার টোটাল কত মার্কস আসছে? 1, 2, 3 and then 2 marks here. 5 marks আপনার এই simple retrieval questions থেকে আসে। Question 1 and 2 are of let's say text 1. It is of text 1. Question 4 and 5 is from text 2. Pairs. Achha, there's a few tips you should remember whenever you're answering these questions. এগুলো এক মার্কের questions হয়, কিন্তু and people are like, just এক mark, এর তো কোনো প্যারা নাই, it's easy to answer. Well, sometimes people lose marks. Why so? You'll be given the line numbers to scan through in order to find your answer or answers. So আপনাকে বলে দেবে যে আচ্ছা line 11 to 12, 13 to 21, এই লাইনে state one thing that the writer sees, one thing the writer feels. আপনাকে line number দিয়ে দেবে. So you would have to go to that line and you would have to scan through and you would have to find whatever you were asked to find. 2, you must not change words such that their meanings change, or you can say alter. এটা অনেক সময় দেখেছি যে মানে ঘুরিয়ে পেঁচিয়ে লিখতে গিয়ে প্যারাফ্রেজিং করতে গিয়ে এমন ওয়ার্ড নিজেরা আপনারা দেন that it changes the meaning or something that the writer did not say, that will lose you the marks. You must never write answers as one word answers, just or single word as single word answers. এটা করবেন, আপনার মার্কস চলে যাবে। হ্যাঁ, you're supposed to save time in simple retrieval questions, but এরকম স্যাক্রিফাইস করতে যায় না যেখানে আপনি আপনার টাইম স্যাক্রিফাইস করতে গিয়ে আপনি আপনার মার্কস হারায় ফেলবেন। that's not a really worth it thing. It's not really worth it to do. Don't give away marks. Better keep the original intact with slight paraphrasing. এটা খুব ইম্পর্টেন্ট। অরিজিনালটার সাথে মিল থাকবে, একটু খালি প্যারাফ্রেজ করবেন, দ্যাটস অল। There you go. এরপর আসে হচ্ছে রাইডার্স এফেক্ট কোয়েশ্চেন্স, যেটা আমাদের কোয়েশ্চেন 3 and 6 থাকে, এটা আপনারা সবাই জানেন। কিছু টাইপস আছে অ্যান্ড অনেক ধরনের টাইপস আছে। PEE মেথড অনেকে ইউজ করেন, ওইটাও আমি দেখাবো। এটা আরেকটা স্ট্রাকচার, এটা আমরা অনেক সময় ইউজ করে থাকি। এটা দেখাই, এটা আমাদের আমরা যখন পরীক্ষা দিই তখন we use this kind of structure, and so I personally like this structure. I found it really interesting, and so I've seen other teachers teach different structures which I didn't like. It too overwhelming, like a messy, like a sometimes it's not really that effective. This one, however, seems to be really nice. So the question, well, there's a few types. The first type questions is where you're going to see the writer says, how does he present his advice and ideas? And এটা ফরম্যাটটা আমরা নর্মালি রাখি, একটা ইন্ট্রোডাকশন, এই ক্রেডিবিলিটি নিয়ে একটা প্যারাগ্রাফ, স্ট্রাকচার নিয়ে একটা প্যারাগ্রাফ, রেজিস্টার নিয়ে একটা প্যারাগ্রাফ, কনক্লুশনে পার্সপেক্টিভ নোট বা একটা কমেন্ট আমরা দিতে পারি। মানে বড় একটা প্যারাগ্রাফ লিখবেন, আপনি কি বুঝেছেন টেক্সট থেকে পড়ে, সেটা একটা কমেন্ট আপনি দিতে পারেন। ইন্ট্রোডাকশনটা নর্মালি আমরা দিয়ে থাকি, সামটাইমস ইন্ট্রোডাকশনটা খুবই বোরিং হয়। এরকম কেস যদি হয়, ইউ ক্যান ইগনোর দ্য ইন্ট্রোডাকশন অ্যান্ড ডিরেক্টলি গেট ইন টু দ্য ক্রেডিবিলিটি। একটা এক্সাম্পল দিয়েছি এখানে, এই যে আমাদের এক্সাম্পলটা, দ্য রাইটার হ্যাজ প্রেজেন্টেড, এটা ক্রেডিবিলিটি নিয়ে লিখেছে একজন, স্ট্রাকচার নিয়ে লিখেছেন একজন, রেজিস্টার নিয়ে লিখেছে and then তিনি কি করেছেন, তিনি আলাদা একটা প্যারাগ্রাফ লিখেছেন, পার্সপেক্টিভ নোট / কনক্লুশন, অ্যান্ড খুব সুন্দর করে তিনি অ্যান্সারটা লিখেছেন। আমরা অনেক অ্যান্সার ডিসকাস করেছি ক্লাসে, আমি জাস্ট এটা একটা দিয়ে রাখলাম। আমরা তো কত অ্যান্সার লিখেছি, যে নিচে আমার you have my own written answers, but this is an example of type 1. Then comes type 2. Sadly আমি type 2 example লিখেছি, but I couldn't find it. Type 2 is rare, persuade করে কি করে, and people like to use this. I personally also like to use this particular structure. And what the format is, this is a very common structure. You'll see this I probably sound like Optimus Prime on steroids. You probably will see people using this. Teachers really love to use ethos, logos, pathos structure. Ethos has to do with credibility, logos has to do with logistic, pathos has to do with emotion. Sometimes it could mean register. These are the key devices that we look for in these kind of questions. Rhetorical question or rhetorical question is fine. Opinions is good, facts is good, anecdote is excellent, list, imperative tone, inclusive tone, all of these are really good stuff, and you look for these devices when you're looking for a persuade question. This is the most difficult one so far, and it will always be so until the very end. The type 3, which seems to daunt many students, including me. It used to be a nightmare during my O levels, but I happen to really not think much of it. So don't let it overwhelm you. Just know your stuff, know your things, and just write. just present yourself in your copy. There's a few structures people use. There's a few structures people like to use. They use the expectation, experience, afterthought. They use initial, present, and future structure. There's many structures to use. I'll give you an idea as to what this is actually. Most of the time, 9 out of 10, actually all the time, describe questions are anecdotes. You'll see a trend. They're anecdote questions. And what you're going to see is these questions will have 3 phases. The initial phase, where the writer has not officially started his journey, or it says the text is about going to a party. The writer hasn't physically, or he hasn't arrived at the party just yet. It's before pre-party arrangements and whatnot. So we discuss how his expectation is, and then we go into the main events, the big paragraphs that underscore the main events going on, and we see if the experience coincides with the expectation. Say the expectation was really positive, and the example I like to use is, suppose you're going to a birthday party and you don't eat for 2 days because you, in your head, you're like, you're gonna go to the birthday party and you're gonna have an entire cake as dinner, lunch, and breakfast, and so your expectation is really high. You are expecting to meet lots of people. You're expecting to kind of, the whole party to be a blast. So you have a great expectation. Now what happens? You transition from expectation to experience. You show up, and the first thing you see is there is literally nobody. They hand you a muffin and they kick you out of the party. The experience was brutal. It was horrendous. Your afterthought, you reflect upon the entire event. Does the afterthought coincide with the expectation? Hell no. What is the resolution? Are you coming back? Probably not. You're probably scarred for the rest of your life. আর জীবন আপনি কোনো পার্টিতে যাবেন না. So this is kind of like the 3 phase we divide each descriptive writing that the writer writes, that the text has to offer, and আমরা এই 3 ভাগে আমরা ভাঙি এটা. One of the most important things I have to say is word or language and analysis. I got the spelling wrong, I know that. And this is something very important. আপনাদেরকে এটা অনেকবার দেখিয়েছি আমি. If I were to show one of the mark schemes, let me show you one of the mark schemes. Just some random mark scheme. Just open a random mark scheme, not the question paper. And here it is. The assessment objective 2. Understand. What does it say? Understand and analyze how writers use linguistic and structural devices to achieve their effects. This is a indirect reference to word analysis as well. The writer will use lots of word analysis. Now, আপনাদের মধ্যে could be confused how to do word analysis. The simplest, I wouldn't want to say formula. I don't want to teach some mathematical formula in English language, but one of the best ways to analyze a word is first identify a word that can be talked about. If you take like a word school or cool, it's not something you can really talk about. I mean, it's gonna be forceful if you kind of relate this with. You can't really talk about anything. For instance, if you were to say the writer, or I don't even know, life is like heaven. Life is like heaven, right? And then you could kind of like describe what the word heaven here means. And how we start is, you first, and I'll make some rule of thumb. Identify the word that is to be analyzed. Okay? That's the first thing you should that you should identify. And if it's more than one word, you would say identify. That's not a word analysis anymore. That's a phrase analysis, and that comes into perspective understanding. But word analysis is when we particularly focus on a single word. Define its literal meaning. Now, this is where things might get weird. For example, if there's a word like I got the spelling wrong. There's not an yep. There's not an U there. Oh my god. Ubiquity. Or say I don't know, sublime. Right? If the writer uses something like this, okay? Why did I use an E? Come on, man. Ubiquity. And you have no idea what ubiquity means, nor do you have any idea, nor you don't even know what sublime means. If this is the case, you can take contextual meanings, but again, knowing what the words literally mean can actually be a really good advantage. How do you know that? Well, you need to know a big chunk of vocabularies, and that's something we've talked about. When it comes to section C and B, you kind of need to show off English. That's the main purpose. You learned English in the first place to show off, and so in section B and C, you would need to show off as much as ambitious vocabularies as you can, such that the examiners give you the marks. Now, you would need to describe the literal meaning of a word. Then you would have to refer back to the quote. So, say when writer says, thinking about it. It's 3 a.m. I have no idea in my head, but I'm thinking about it. Let me think. I don't know, just stick to one life. something like that, I don't know, right? And so you would kind of talk about the word maze here. You would expect, the examiner would expect you to kind of talk about the word maze, and then you would refer back to the quote, why he said that, and then you would connect your definition, and if you want to add an analogy, with the writers. Okay, that's what you're gonna do. So there's an E over there of, and it's gonna be an analogy. I'm gonna cry, but there you go. So this is actually one of the rule of thumbs that you should be using whenever you're describing whenever you're attempting to do a word analysis. And this first three parts are considered to be the language analysis part. This is where you kind of add the perspective comment. Okay, perspective. Got the spelling right. You could say perspective understanding as well. So perspective comment. All right, that's something you can definitely do. Okay, so again, let's recall what we just said, the rule of thumb. So you have, say you have a word that you want to talk about. Okay, and so you're going to identify the word that needs to be analyzed. Say this is your example, so you identify this is the word that I want to analyze. You define its literal meaning. Maze is, those puzzles where there is no map and whatnot, a bewildering puzzle. Refer back to the quote. Why did the writer label maze as a puzzle, or why did he use the metaphor to connote to compare maze as a puzzle? And connect your definition and the analogy with the writers. This is exactly where we put perspective comment. This is where you would have to say that he's saying life is uncertain. Life is very it's like a puzzle. You need to solve whatever, it's like a war. There is no guidance, nothing. There's many ways you can interpret it, but I'm just giving you a vague idea, of course. So there you go. Language analysis is something that you can use anywhere and everywhere, especially in describe questions. This thing is going to play a key role when it comes to getting marks. So I say this all the time. You guys know that word analysis or language analysis with perspective comment is key to get good marks. Now, a question might arise. Do we give perspective comments? Do we give word analysis in the present and persuade questions? If you ever find any word, even if that text is not a described question, say you found a good word that could be described in a present question, never leave that word out. Always describe, always, I cannot spell this out. Even if it's not a described question, you find a word that can be analyzed, always use this method. Describe, word analysis, and give a perspective comment. Trust me, it's going to boost your marks like it's just something you cannot miss out on. It's gonna boost your marks in ways you cannot even fathom. Always give perspective comments and word analysis. It's gonna help you a lot to get those juicy marks. Then we have the text comparison. This would conclude our section A's revision. This is the format we use. What we like to do is we like to save time in introduction and the conclusion. So there is a very common structure that we follow. The structure always ensures that you always have something to write about and you always score those indicative points. And if you look at the mark scheme, for any question 7. One of the marking points is where they say both texts clearly convey the writer's ideas and perspective, and they would talk about both are sometimes there you go. Sometimes it depends on text, but this particular one doesn't have that. But if you see the conclusion, which is a fixed conclusion, this is exactly the point that mark schemes ask, and that is something you unknowingly add because of the format, but you're always going to get 1 mark for the ending and 1 mark or even more for the introduction if your introduction has more stuffs in it. This is the common introduction, which say that the both topics have a similar title, both texts have a similar topic, and this title name is a name that you would have to read both texts and you would have to come up with. This is not the name of the texts. I repeat, this is not the title name of the texts. This is something you read and you have to come up with. You have to see what both texts talk about, what title suits these two texts, such that it would link between both of them. It would bridge the gap between the two texts. This can be seen. This is exact structure. I'm not going to go into that details. I've gone through this many times, and I don't have that time to invest on it anymore. This is the structure that we follow. Always follow this structure. Both texts talk about X, but they do it in a different way. You have a start verb and Shapshamai. Always bring up a point of text 1 and you describe it. Similarly, you bring up a point of text 2 of the same kind and you describe, and one small statement at the end or maybe somewhere over here that would say why they are different. This would be considered as one body paragraph, although there will be like 2 or 3 this will be together. This will be like in this paragraph. I don't know if I'm making it, if anything's making any sense. This is like one paragraph. Similarly, you would write another paragraph with this, but I just made a different paragraph so it's easier to understand. But this would be one paragraph, this would be another paragraph, but altogether this is one body paragraph. Similarly, you're going to take points. You're going to say both talk about another topic that both share, and you're gonna say but they do it in a different, again I wrote different way, and you're gonna take the same thing, point 1, similarly point 2. There you go. In this particular text, I would suggest to change this word once in a while. Similarly, conversely, whereas, in the same way. You could use however, anything to bridge the gap between text 1 and text 2. Do not use similarly more than once. Do not use similarly more than once. Are they gonna cut marks? No. You're here giving English exam. Flex your English. Don't be that stupid, annoying idiot student who just lazy. I can't even say it. Just don't be that lazy flummox, just lummox, that just keeps using that one word they are familiar with. So don't do that. Use different words. I gave a little sheet, and if you want, I can write it. I don't really want to do this anymore, but there's many ways you can say it. Similarly, you could say conversely. You could say so many things to say. My head's not working right now, but definitely you can search it up. Use ChatGPT if you desire to come up with synonyms of similarly, but do not use similarly more than once. It loses you lose your credibility. Okay, normally we come up with 3 big beautiful paragraphs, and then we just write the conclusion. Here are some sample answers for you guys to look at. This is from June 2021. This is the sample answer 1. There we go. This is a similar topic. It was the same structure we used on top, and this is, you guys know this really well. I'm not really going into it. There you go. That this whole thing is an introduction. No, this introduction is always gonna get 1 mark as long as you follow the structure, and it could even get more than that if you discuss a little bit more into it. Like this might get 2 marks because we're talking about the tones and whatnot. A little bit, this will get a minimum of 1 mark. It could get more if you desire to add any other extra points into your own introduction. Body paragraph 1. The common statement, both talk about the same thing, but they have different scopes. This is the text 1 point. This is this part. Text 1, describe, and then we use similarly, and then that one paragraph. So there is your similarly, there is your second paragraph. All right, and it goes bigger. Okay, second paragraph again, similar, big paragraph 1 of text 1, similarly, big paragraph 2 of text 2. That's how we do it. Okay, all right. So this is the text for you guys to, it's gonna be there, you guys can read it out. This is another sample answer. Again, get to see the structure, paragraph, similar, the statement, point from text 1, right? Point from text 1, and then you have similarly, point from text 2, and then the last difference that makes it different. Again, para 2, both same but different. Point 1, conversely, similarly, point 2, and somewhere over here, the difference. Again, same, text 1, and we did a little experiment here. Instead of always using the similarity, we brought the difference in a different way. We said the resolution to this problem was suggested by Sasha in text 2. And this is another way of writing. You could use this. I like to use different structures. Normally, more or less, I like to stick to 1 or 2 structures, but I like to show different ways of writing as well. But I wouldn't suggest you guys to experiment in the exam. Stick to a structure that you're familiar with, that you are comfortable with, and commit to it. There you go. General points. Some people like to add general points. I say it's useless. Don't do it. Waste of time. They go like, well, text 1 is first person, text 2 is second person, text 1 uses subheading, text 2 doesn't. It's really stupid points. But if you want to waste your time, sure. And then the last ending, it's always the same. I personally would suggest don't waste your time in making general points. Rather, use the time to feed your big paragraphs that are more likely to get more marks. That would be a wiser decision. This is basically a very short overview of Section A of the IGCSE International English Language B. In the future video, we're going to go through Section B. This was Section A. We'll look into Section B and C, and that would be the end of the specification.